appreciate you jumping on with me and making the time,
Yeah.
taking time away from your flu and managing your kid. How old is your daughter now?
She's 16 months. Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, because at this point, 16 months, there should be some walk-ins, some
She's
motivating.
running.
Yeah, could be. There's probably some talking. So all these things are happening,
Yeah,
right?
she's got some words, but not enough. And so she's so smart. She understands everything. I mean, she understands complex sentences, and she's so frustrated that she can't communicate back.
Awesome.
So it's so cool to see. I mean, you could just tell her, an entire sentence of multiple things to do.
Yeah.
And she can go and do whatever and understands. And it's like when she's just frustrated, she just wants to be communicating back. So
that's awesome.
I get it. We can take all of the blame where some of these personality traits come from, but they're also fun. That's like she's got this little sense of humor already that she knows to troll me and play me against my husband. We'll be sitting at lunch and she's like, I need help with the spoon, but she has to hand it towards me until I reach, and then she laughs and hands it over to Dad and is like, no, haha. Mom, man, you think you're gonna help me, but I'm just trolling you. And she won't say mama yet. I'm like, can you say mama? And she looks at me and laughs and goes, Dad. So it's like she knows.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's sassy. That's some sass going on there. Yeah. Kids got the sass built in. They're natural born lawyers and manipulators early on. They know how to get it done. They got to harness that.
Yep, but it's fun.
So I'm excited because we've known each other a while and we've talked through work stuff, but in this new role we were just talking about, one of the things that I wanted to do after being involved in lots of diverse things, but in particular because I have two daughters and because as a person who was hiring, was always looking to promote women in tech and STEM and just bring just kind of keep looking out for those opportunities. So I'm excited to hear your journey into tech and what you've experienced. Yep. Let's start maybe just for those who don't know you, maybe an introduction, and then we can move into kind of how you got started in tech.
Yeah, sounds great. So I'm Trisha Alverson. I'm a software solutions architect at Ellipse Solutions, a Microsoft partner. And we work primarily on Dynamics or D365. And I have personally worked on Dynamics for 16 and a half years now. So most of my, career after college has all been Dynamics and all on the tech side. So it'll be pretty fun to talk about. And I have definitely taken a unique path to get there. So it'll be nice to talk about, those kind of challenges and the different ways to take a path. And it is definitely unique as a woman, I think. And, like you've mentioned, I've seen that in hiring and all of that. So I'm happy to participate, and hopefully it helps, other people see the different options there are and the different ways, you can chart your own path.
Yeah, that's the end goal is just to get more stories out there floating in the ether so people can see, who's like, I don't know. And then they realize, oh, but she did it and she took this path, or I didn't even think about, this really technical side of coding. I was thinking more, functional or whatever, just really broadening the spectrum of what is possible.
Yeah. And getting people, you can change your mind.
Always.
At any time. That's the cool thing. So that'll be definitely in my, talk of the challenges and interesting things along the way. I had to change directions a few times.
And of course, I worked with you at Ellipse and love the company and again, love having you on. So yeah, let's just jump right in and let you start, talking about, how you got started. Like what was that nugget that said, I do want to do tech, and how, where it went from there?
So really just, it was getting the first job out of college. So I was still kind of putting, the irons in a few different fires. When I was young, I knew I wanted to be in STEM. Always have wanted to be, from junior high, I started out with that first nerdy exposure, super nerdy. I knew after reading Stephen Hawking that I wanted to be a theoretical astrophysicist.
Awesome.
And so that was really my path at first and for many years even. I mean, so I ended up going to college for physics and taking, very rigorous coursework, learning all of that. But at the same time, I was still very involved in music.
Mm,
So that was kind of always my hobby. And in school, I was super involved in music. Um, and, the funny thing is, both of the fields I was kind of in were very male dominant
mm,
because not necessarily music in general, but I play percussion and drums.
mm.
So,
You got Sheila
since I
E, and
was
that's about it. I'm trying to think of other female drummers that I not
right.
able to the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is I was in grade school and I was the only girl.
Mm.
I was always the only girl in the, percussion section. I was the only girl at regional, things. I was the only girl. Um, and so I think kind of getting over that fact early helped me in the rest of, college and my career.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that, since I was young, all of my interests were pretty male dominated. The nerdy kind of things, the nerd type of clubs in
Yeah.
school. I was the only girl on the, the science based clubs and those kind of things. And
And
um,
drumming and music is kind of mathematical too. I mean, there's a lot of crossover there, which is interesting.
yeah, I loved studying like music theory in college and stuff.
Mm.
And that really lines up for me from that type of, spot in my brain.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I thought I wanted to be a physicist. I went to school starting majoring in physics, went to a very tech heavy school, started taking these super tough classes. As a freshman, I'm dumped right into honors physics,
Wow.
and we walk in and you look at the book and it's the MIT physics book. And I'm like, I'm not at MIT. Am I ready for this level?
Yeah.
And, then you look around the classroom and there's one other girl. So it was kind of just the same thing where right away there just weren't many girls studying physics, at the college level.
Yeah.
So I think I know that's jumping ahead to the future of women in tech, but I think that's the biggest opportunity is to get more girls in school studying it and seeing that it's a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key thing again, is that if all you see is men, then you're like, if you're not brave like you were, you're afraid to step into that. Well, I don't want to be the only girl in the room or whatever. It could be the same, if for ballet, like the first dude that wanted to do ballet thought, I don't know, I want to be the only guy doing ballet or something. It's like being the only one or only seeing one type of person
Yeah.
makes it, doesn't seem accessible. So again, like you said, getting more people in it, telling, broadening that vision to show what's possible is important.
Yeah. And then I guess the interesting turn is, in college, then you realize what the rest of your career in life looks like in physics. And it's challenging.
Mm,
You're in your physics lab and you see a cot off to the side in the room. And it's like, that's where the graduate student sleeps
mm,
that's teaching you physics right now, at that
right,
level of commitment. And you're like, and then you kind of find out too, it's like, their stipends are not huge. It's
right.
a tough path and very long. And so I kind of started to realize that career path just wasn't for me. I wasn't committed enough
Hmm.
and passionate enough to make it my whole life of academia,
Yeah.
basically. It's so challenging and I'm so glad people do it and are amazing at it.
Yeah. It's that
But
extra one or two genes that lets them, they don't care about sleeping on the cot or
right.
waking up at 2 a.m. because they had an idea and they got to get it out onto paper or chalkboard or
Yeah.
whatever, that they're using.
Yeah. So that was when I realized I wanted to pivot. And so I luckily had enough music going that I swapped majors, but still did the physics minor.
Hmm.
So I ended up taking just tons of courses in music and physics.
Okay.
And the cool thing about the physics education, or at least the way, that department focused on it, is they taught you how to problem solve.
Yeah.
It was it wasn't focused on the physics as much. It's like all of the different classes taught you how to problem solve, analyze, play, Sherlock and deduce and breadcrumb your way through things. And that's been the biggest thing that's helped me in my career.
Yep. Do you think
And
just right there,
especially
you had
taking
that
that pivot.
inherent already?
I'm sorry.
Do you think you had that inherently already, that ability to easily kind of break things down into problem solving, or do you think it was? I mean, there's probably a balance. I guess I'll answer my own question, but just from your standpoint, do you think you had that ability going in and then just accentuated it, or did you have to really work at that problem solving skill
Um,
set?
I think I had a natural like curiosity and like analytical kind of like mind for it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was definitely the training that honed
Mm,
it and brought it to the like a conscious level
gotcha.
of how to analyze things. And then you have to take classes that are like called you know computers, math, and physics, where they give you, a physics problem of a type of physics you've never seen, quantum physics or something. And then a math you haven't studied in math class, differential equations. And then you have to write a computer program to solve that problem for you.
Mm,
So something like that was such a cool, well rounded
yeah.
thing. And, they really focused in and said, hey, you get this education. You don't have to be a physicist. You could be any type of engineer
Yeah.
or, anything in tech, and you're going to be ready for it.
Yeah.
So with that kind of pivot, I didn't even really know what type of job for sure I wanted to get. I was considering grad school, I was considering law school, all kinds of things. Um, and my new favorite quote, it's the title of Ina Garten's new biography, and I think she took it from someone else, but it's "Be ready when the luck happens,"
Mm,
and that's a theme for me.
yeah.
So I was ready, and the luck happened. Of my mom found a job advertising that they wanted a musician who knew C# coding.
That's what a wild job description.
And that was really the job description, and in that
Wow.
order, they wanted a musician that knew C#. And I had just got a music degree and a physics minor, and C# was the language we did everything in.
That is what a strike.
Yeah, so I was ready when the luck happened, and it was a music publishing company upgrading their dynamic system.
Wow.
So I was right there and ready when the luck happened, and that's how I broke into dynamics and tech. And again, it takes a company that was, almost looking for someone with the more unusual path
Mm-hmm.
and that more well-rounded kind of thing, because I think what it gets you, well, I mean, especially it's, we're working on ERP software. So you have to understand the business side of things,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're on the tech side. And
It
so
helps
that's
a
what,
ton. I mean, you could be
yeah,
a straight techie, but it helps. I mean, to really make your career hum, it helps to know and be that functional, that, like you said, that problem solving, understanding ERP as well.
yeah. So that's how I broke in. Super good luck of that company. And it was a small company with great people in management. And it was, because it was small, you know, my mentors were, the executives.
Mm,
So, I was being mentored from them on business, my first job out of college, all of those things. So, again, just, some good luck on that.
yeah,
My first job really set me up to learn, you know, how to have a career.
that's really interesting, and you made me think too. I love that, be ready for the luck when it happens, because you don't know, and if you're kind of keeping in mind what is going to drive you, and you have a good beacon of what that is, you kind of, it's almost like the luck, it happens, but you're really attuned to it too. So you, if you hadn't kind of thought about this opportunity somewhere in your brain, it might not have resonated, but because you're kind of open to it, boom, it hit, and then you're there. And
Yeah.
I'm very similar. I guess what I was getting to too is that when I moved to Colorado, I wanted to be an artist, and so I waited about a year to get my art to get in-state tuition, and in that time, I decided that, much like you, I kind of started hearing and talking. I was like, oh, um, art isn't going to get you a lot of money. So it's going to be fun, maybe, but it's also a lot of hard work. And if you're making art for a company, it might not even be as fun as you think it is, because you can't be as creative as, whatever, all these things. And so I started thinking about it, and I picked up a book on IT. I think it was just a basic, and I started reading, and the one thing that I read that really got me excited about IT was how emails are sent and how packets are broken down, and the ones and zeros of it all, and just the basics that became like as well. I can totally understand this, and the magic of it all just kind of was like, you know what, I have to be in the IT industry now. And so that kind of was my kind of luck as it comes to you moment. Is like I just picked this book up at the library to kind of see what IT would be like,
Yeah.
and it was just so impactful. Like you mentioned, reading a Stephen Hawkins, like, wow, this is something I want to do.
Yeah. And yeah, that's, I mean, it's so cool, but it's exactly like you say, you do have to take that opportunity. You have to be brave. You have to be confident in your ability to learn. And so I think that's the other big thing I learned, it's not, I don't know everything.
Hmm.
My first job out of college, I didn't know dynamics, but I was confident, I think through my experiences and education, that I could learn
Yeah.
that. And so that's what I think that's again what developed more in school was confidence that I can learn if I decide to do something. I'm very dedicated and I can go through it, that way.
Yeah.
And so I think, as a woman, the biggest barrier is just to be in that room and be brave enough to be the only one in that room
Hmm.
and be confident in your ability to learn. If you're maybe start out behind in some way to the other, guys, that you'll get there. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, so and that's hard. And there's no easy answer or, quick, here's the trick to being, confident being in a room full of guys. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable and sometimes you have, just pretty nice, normal people
Yeah.
and everyone, it's doesn't, isn't a thing. So I hope that, it's just girls breaking through in that school environment when they're younger to make it just more normalized. And
Yeah.
then there's less, down the line. Because I think, once you get to the workplace, it hasn't been as much. I've worked in a lot of smaller companies where, I might be the only woman, but I might be only one of two people in the,
Right.
IT department. So it's a hard, ratio. I mean, still at Ellipse right now, I'm the only female architect.
Hmm.
So I'm still in that position as the
Right.
only woman in the, little
On
tech
the
bubble.
solutions, like the technical tech, because there's a lot of
Yeah,
female functional business analysts, project
absolutely.
managers,
Yeah.
but from a true development standpoint.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now I do have optimism because on the development team, there are more and more women
Yeah. Yeah.
and
So
they're
in
awesome. So
Moldova, in Moldova, they have a lot of females on the development team, like the
yeah,
strict, like back end coding
yeah.
development team. Yeah.
And I think, in all around the world, that's becoming more prevalent. And, hopefully for them, it's just not even as much of a thing.
Yeah, I think your point is right. It's definitely um, getting better. I think what I'm hearing from smart folks in the industry is that it's hit a plateau as well, and some of that just needs again another bump. Another, I've heard people call it a rebrand. Is like, hey, just this is what tech is. It's not this. It's this and this and this and this, and there's all so many different faces and possibilities and opportunities of what tech can be for you. Like, it could
Yeah.
be really technical, it could be functional, it could be adjacent, but
Yeah.
there's just a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. And so hopefully the more people have, just even some of that background in, you don't even have to go into development, strictly. But I think, if everyone takes like some sort of basic technical class, I mean, even if you're in marketing, it's helpful to understand what your development team is doing from a high
Hmm.
level. It's
Yeah.
helpful to understand, that workflow that's going on in the back end of any company now. Any
Yeah.
company has a pretty heavy back end of tech, right? So it's one of those things that hopefully just everyone really gets a little bit, just a dabble of the tech, to understand the opportunities and what's going on. Because I mean, it's in previous jobs I would be hiring for technical positions,
Mm.
and it was a downer that there just weren't a lot of women applying.
I
So
saw a
it's
lot
not
of that too.
even,
Yeah.
it's not even just that men are getting the job and women aren't. They weren't there in the application. And so that's where I'm hoping that, the more that get it in school, then there will be more applying, and just, by way of that,
Yeah.
good people will get the job.
I agree. I mean, again, I did a lot of hiring, from, 2008ish on to 2020. A small IT department, but every couple of years you're hiring, in and out, new developers, people moving on. So, fair number of interviews, and yeah, it wasn't that. It just there weren't many females applying.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, it's too bad, because I would definitely uplift and make sure I interview, just because I think I want to give that uplift that opportunity. But when there's when there's nobody applying, it's like hard. You're like, well,
Yeah.
this, or later on it was getting better. Like by mid teens, starting to see some really qualified candidates come in. But before that, a lot of times the women that would apply were not as qualified, just
Yeah.
out there, which is great. But the one thing that comes to mind, it would be like if I was hiring for a tech support role, they were office managers and just wanted to break into tech, but didn't really know tech,
Yeah.
kind of looking for that first opportunity. But but still happy to interview them and just kind of see. I was like, but again,
Yeah.
not seeing many folks until later on. So
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully again
Hopefully.
that's the trend that's going higher.
Yeah. And I think too, some of the other things we've been hitting on too, as hopefully as more people see, the how a career in tech looks like,
Hmm.
and especially for a woman, they'll be more interested in getting into it. Because I mean, we talked about touching on, you know, work life balance and personal life and stuff like that. And it's one of those things that once I got into tech, I realized I had some different opportunities than
Hmm.
some other career paths that have definitely given me more flexibility to build the lifestyle
Yeah.
I want, and that works best for me and our family, which
Yeah.
is just not an option for women in every other type of industry and that kind of thing. So that's definitely, I think, you know a plus side of being a woman in tech.
Yeah.
There's some flexibility. I'm in consulting, and so like we were talking about, I only less than a year and a half ago had my first baby, and I can cut back on some hours and get to spend time with her as a baby. And not every career lets you make that choice when it's the right time for you.
Yeah.
um, and I think tech gives women more opportunities to do that, so hopefully they'll see some of that too. Because I mean, it's so hard, because as a woman you're put in that position of, at that point in your life, you have to kind of choose, how is this going to look for me? What are my options? You have to support your family,
Hmm.
you want to be with your baby, you want to do what's right for you. So, for me personally, it's like so amazing to get to stay stuck into the tech world. Taking a complete break would be hard in tech. It's like, oh, if you step away for a few years,
Yeah.
you're kind of behind the times maybe, or it's just challenging to get back in or anything like that. So this allows me to stay totally involved, keep my career going, and for me, get the best of both worlds. you
Yeah.
know get to spend more time with the baby while she's little, and do a little bit of everything good. And that's definitely thanks to a tech career.
That's a great nuance to point out, just that you might not think about. Again, because it is tough. I mean, I've shared, you know, looking back at my hiring history, or seeing more of this than feeling it. But should you hire a woman because she might want to start a family, and what does that do to the interruption to the job and the company that's hiring her? That's
Hmm.
a real thing that I've seen discussed,
Right.
in a hiring cycle, and that's just a weird thing to think about. To
Yeah.
go
And
through, like you said, like, hey, it's you got some flexibility here. This kind of changing, and you can kind of write your own schedule and financial
right.
security as well.
And I can look at it from the other perspective too, as far as a hiring cycle. I mean, I think the nice thing then, that you've got a employee that's already trained, that knows your business and those kind of things. So even if someone like me goes to a little bit less hours for a while, you might have to fill in some gaps or hire more people, but then in the end, you've still kept an employee
Mm-hmm.
instead of having to rehire from scratch, train someone from scratch. We all know it's really expensive to hire someone,
Yeah.
right? You're recruiting, you're finding the right person. Some people then might not be the right fit, might be. So, you know, hopefully it seems to me to be a mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
And again, that's, kind of a newer, I think, thing, but tech allows that, where a company can have, you know, different people at different levels and different lifestyles, and, it all still can be mutually beneficial.
And to your point, I think also, seeing somebody like you, do this, I mean, I assume at some point you went to Ellipse and said, "Hey, I'm going to be having this baby. Here's what I'm thinking afterwards." And so you create some expectation as to what can, and that just lends like, "Hey, yeah, we love Trish. We want to keep her on here, and yeah, we do want to work this out because we know, like you said, it's difficult to hire, and we don't want to lose a good talent. And so we are, going to work and make this flexibility happen for her so that she can do her thing and still support us and stay in touch. And then, she moves back in, or, who knows what happens. But basically you're creating that opportunity by feeling empowered and going and having that conversation. So good for people to see that, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
If you're in the position, you're right now, you're cruising along, but maybe you got a family on the horizon, think about having the conversation ahead of time, about what the expectations would be. Because it shouldn't be a negative thing is the point. It should be just a regular objective conversation. Like, this is part of life. I'm having a family now, and how do we
Yeah.
make it work for us?
Right. And that's exactly it. And yeah, again, it's, an opportunity, a new opportunity to do something a different way.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not necessarily easy. It's challenging, but it's a way to have some balance.
I think it's fun, in my opinion, like companies, Lips, actually did, I think, a good job at least, I'd say personally, I don't know about everybody's experience, but I'm a unique character. You're a unique character. We each have different skill sets. We bring different things. And I feel like, when they recognize something that, hey, we can use this. There was no strict like, oh, but we hired you for this.
Yeah,
But hey, you're also good at these other three things. Let's definitely use those too. And let's
absolutely.
adapt to the person, and their strengths, and fill in, hopefully, maybe help them fill in their weaknesses, or, hey, I'm not as strong here, so we got you, but we're going to definitely use all these cool things you can do too.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely that. And again, I've, had to be ready when the luck happened to, get with a company like Ellipse.
Yeah. So
And
how did that happen? So did you learn X++ on your first music
yeah,
slash
so
C# job?
yeah, exactly. So my very first, task was upgrade Dynamics, by yourself.
Here's a box. Good luck.
Yeah. But like I said, I was lucky to have really good, mentors in management at that company. It was a small enough company. Um, and that is where, I had a good mentors for learning the tech stuff.
Mm.
I had good mentors for learning the business stuff, and it was a really great combination to learn. And I went, from there to, another, this is like end user side place, and kind of, honed the skills, a bigger place, more integrations, more things like that. And kind of just as I look towards the future, I just thought I would get more opportunities, and it would be more of the challenges I like to
Hmm.
get into consulting.
Yeah.
And so that was when I went to Ellipse. So I was like, okay, I'm ready to do the consulting side. I like working on a team, because that was the biggest challenge, I think, of those other earlier jobs I had, was
Hmm.
you are the dynamics person.
Right.
When you go on vacation, everything stops.
Yeah. No dynamicsing anymore. Dynamicsing is done until
Yeah,
you get back.
yeah, and that kind of thing. And so that's a really hard challenge as well, I think, with, work life balance. But I think, consulting, there's obviously challenge, and you're busy and you spend a lot of hours doing it, but you're at least still part of a team where, you can say, hey, I'm not an expert in this one piece of something my client needs. I can ask someone else on the team that did a huge project on just that thing.
Hmm.
And so it's, for me, the more of a team and collaborative atmosphere in the consulting world was
Yeah.
is great for me. And the challenge of it, I like the challenge of working with all different companies and industries and that kind of stuff.
Been talking to some folks that just went through a whole program of upskilling and tech, and a number of them were asking, well, should I go into end user or consulting? And I would kind of throw it back because I don't know, and I would say, well, let me ask you this: do you like doing one thing at a time and like really focusing on that one thing? Picture yourself at home and you're making dinner. When I'm making dinner, I've got to be making dinner. I can't have any other distractions. I got to be making dinner. And is that where my sweet spot is? Or am I the person that thrives when I'm making dinner, the doorbell rings, the phone rings, my kid's crying, the dog needs to go out, and I'm like, yeah, I got it all. Boom, I'm doing them. Bang, bang, bang. I'm running around because then kind of with some degree of certainty whether I'll be good at an end user where I'm just working in supply chain and that's all I do every day is just one kind of thing, or consulting where it's like I'm working with Nortec and then I'm working with this and then I'm moving from project to type of thing, from meetings, and they could be all different in one day. Like I'm on 5 different things in one day and my brain's got to do that quick flip to say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm coding and now all of a sudden I'm talking and then I'm coding a different thing, which is a totally different project or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And I, like you said, knowing yourself and your skills and that kind of thing. So I'm definitely, the consulting side of that.
Yeah.
If I'm cooking dinner, I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm doing everything, having it all going, and then I'm like, wow, I love
Yeah.
that energy, that buzz you get from being so productive.
My brain just works that way that I can turn and look at one thing and then I don't need like 10 minutes to get caught up to speed. I can immediately turn to this thing and then this thing.
Yeah. And that's what I hope too, more girls and women see in tech, that there are all these different types of jobs. You
Yeah.
are not just the lonely coder sitting in the dark in the basement,
Exactly. It's not just
doing that. There's different positions, and that's like one of the things, in addition to getting into consulting, I got to get into presenting and speaking at
Mhm.
conferences and stuff, and that's right in my wheelhouse, because I know we're both like drama kid, music kids. Give me a stage,
Mhm.
and a presentation to me is like a music performance.
As far as I
you
know,
know
you haven't brought drums to any of your presentations yet, have you?
Not to the
That would
presentations.
be next level. Yeah.
No, I mean, you can see them in the background.
Yeah. That's all. Is that an electric set?
So,
Is that an electric set of drums?
yeah, I got the electric drum set right in
Nice.
the office. So,
Hmm.
it's still that nice balance for me.
I,
Uh,
I,
but
I,
you
I
can
played
find
drums
those
a little
things.
bit. I love playing drums. It
Yeah,
is a fun thing to do.
it is fun. And you can find ways that those different things fit your career. So that's what I hope more girls see, that
You mentioned
it's not just the trope.
at the top of the conversation too. Even at Ellipse, you're doing help desk, you're doing coding, you're doing speaking engagements, you're doing project scoping, all kinds of different things. So it isn't just like you said a heads down code or a functional support. It could be again if
Yeah,
that's what you gravitate towards, but it
yeah.
but it can be whatever you can find your path in whatever you know makes sense to you and what you want to do.
Definitely fun. And yeah, I wouldn't ever want to be the developer that just sits by themselves, just stares at code all day.
Yeah.
And so just hopefully getting it out there that that's not what it has to be. But that's also an option. And so it's just kind of,
Right.
it's cool for whatever suits anyone, and
You
it's
bet.
just taking those different opportunities to weave your way into that right path for you.
I was going to ask you, just an example of something that was toxic that either you had to get away from or you had to address.
Yeah, so I mean, I've had those situations where I was at a company where I was managing someone who I felt didn't appreciate me because I was a woman,
Hmm.
telling them what to do.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's a very blunt way of saying it. I was doing my best to be a good manager, but it definitely was that vibe. And the people in the shared office space were like, whoa, the way he talked to you is not how he talks to the other people.
Wow.
So I've had that experience, and then what it takes is the confidence to then say to management, hey, this has to be you know resolved in I'm open to whatever resolution. I respect everyone and try and get along with everyone on a personal level. I've worked all types of different jobs with all different types of people, blue collar, white collar, everything. Um, and so, in that situation, it did take then management that's willing to deal with that. Where I think a lot of companies are too scared to, you know, work through that and say it's too bad, it's your problem. And then you're left in a super toxic situation, or companies just kind of let people coast
Yeah.
and
Or
do
you're being too
whatever.
sensitive,
Yeah,
kind of, response like, oh, it's, whatever.
yeah. And so I have been in that situation, and I've been in that situation too, where the management is more of a boys club, and it you know becomes toxic to that extent, and you see, okay, there's no going forward,
Hmm.
when it's just such a traditional boys club. And you have to do the same thing. You have to make an opportunity for yourself, and you do have to just make that decision to move on.
Yeah.
If it's not going to be that environment that can support dealing with things, or just not be in the old fashioned boys club
Yeah.
in management, because that trickles down. Even if it's not your department, if the company is led that way, uh, it's just it's gonna carry on.
It's important. And even to the degree that you work with multiple companies now, so you're consulting, so it could be, 20, 30, 40, whatever, the course of a career, hundreds and hundreds, right? And
Hmm.
there's going to be a moment, or maybe there already has been a moment, where you've had to work with a company that's not your company, but it's a client now,
Right.
which is a different dynamic, because you've got to balance, well, we don't, what's the line of, yeah, this client has to go, or can we rectify maybe again an uncomfortable situation
Yeah.
for, somebody who's working with this, this customer.
Yeah, and exactly, and it's the same scenario where it takes strong leadership to be able to recognize that, and deal with it and find the right solution that's not
Yeah.
at the expense of you know
Putting
the
you or
yeah,
anybody else in a bad
yeah,
situation over and
yeah,
over again. It's like, sorry, this is our client,
yeah,
you have to deal with it. I think it
yeah,
works much better when you're taking care of your employees, and to the extent that there's something really amiss,
right,
rectifying that with the customer client,
yeah.
you know
And so, yeah, so I've been, again, it's worked out for me that in my experience consulting, when there's been something that is a uncomfortable and inappropriate situation, strong leadership is there to get a workable solution
yeah.
for everyone. And I mean, I hear about it from friends and family that are in other consulting jobs where their customer is just totally toxic,
Mm,
and sometimes they are stuck. And I mean, they're going to be faced with the decision of, okay, hey, the company I'm
yeah.
working for just isn't there to stand up for their employees.
Right.
And then you'd have to make that decision to move on,
Yep.
and it's easier said than done.
That's
So
the thing, so much
yeah,
to think about then. Like, you can't just up and leave every time somebody does look at you cross-eyed. You do have to
yeah,
try to find a balance of, how do I prepare myself for these situations, and so that maybe I can, course correct them in the room if it happens. I've built up some tools to do that. Or, like you said, if it's not appropriate in the room, I've got my management to back me up,
yeah,
to help rectify it. Or then, then it gets, like you said, the next level of, can I, move on to a different situation
yeah,
to better serve me, or, what changes can I make first? Again, it's all, that's, the next level is like, what can I make any changes on either side?
yeah. And I think some people get stuck into that too, especially as a female in tech or something. You're the only woman in that room, and you think, oh, I've got to just take it, to fit in, and you don't.
Yeah.
So it is, finding that self-confidence to, you know, deserve the respect everyone deserves.
Yeah.
Everyone should be respected in that professional environment and act professionally. And it is just, it's effort to find a good company, but once there's good leadership, and that's hopefully too that, I mean, I think that's why we need more, the diversity in leadership too. Because if, without those experiences, it might be harder for a leader to, you know, empathize with their employee of, okay, I could totally see how that, crossed the line. Yeah, so I mean, no, I've experienced both sides of it. I've had a lot of good luck with a lot of support and mentors and those kind of things along the way. I've had the challenging situations, um, and it's just I, I've had to learn too to separate your personal value from those
Mm,
bad situations too. I think a lot of people, their job becomes their identity so much to
yeah,
the point that they're okay, it's not going well, someone's treating me bad, it must be me and my identity, and it's it's not. And
yeah.
learning that separation and having that work life balance and stuff helps with that kind of too. So um I think just as a woman, that is, that part of side of that coin that's, more unique. But
And when you
again,
get to
as
that
I
level,
think as
though,
more women get higher and higher and more, mixed into leadership teams, that helps everyone. Overall, I've had, you know, enough good experiences in lock-in opportunities. And yeah, just I hopefully it's just that getting through, it was so much more awkward when you're a kid, and you get, yeah, I think you get over it then at that point, so it doesn't bother me as
yeah,
much now. um when
again,
you
having that perseverance early on. I mean, again, I don't know empirical data, but it just feels logically that just, working that through gave you that foundation not feel as intimidated as you
right,
move through the rest of this. It's like you could have stopped right there. Like you walked in day one to the percussion room and it was
yeah,
like 10 dudes and you. He's like, yep, I'm out of here, on
yeah,
to something else. Or you said, you know what? Let's see what happens. And then once you got past that uncomfortable feeling and they accepted you or whatever happened at that,
yeah,
you came out of that feeling like I can do this at the next iteration too.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's, you get that, you get there, and you win solo ensemble competition, and everyone comes up to you like, yeah, yeah, wow, you're so good at drumming for a girl, and then go, oh.
That hurts.
and,
Yeah.
and you realize though that it's a them.
It's a them thing.
And you
Yeah.
can't control other
Yeah.
people and their world experiences and stuff, and I think that
Yeah.
um helps.
For a
But
blank is that's the worst. That was so good
yeah,
for a, you know,
yep, yeah.
yeah,
So
leave that off.
it's not new for me now.
Yeah.
At this point, oh wow, you're really into tech, and you're a woman. Yep.
I mean, even if you say that
Yeah,
to your kid, oh, it's so good for a 2-year old. I mean, just it immediately like demeans this big bit of praise you get as
yeah,
opposed to, wow, that was an incredible performance. You did a great job.
yeah,
Doesn't mean you have room for improvement. It doesn't mean you weren't the, all of a sudden the Buddy Rich or whatever drummer
yeah, yeah.
you know.
And again, this is all just cultural and societal, and as more girls, get in those rooms, it'll just become more normalized, and those situations won't happen. So
But it takes effort on, to your point, it can't just always be the female going, yep, I heard it, it's not me. It's everybody else again hearing it. It's what, it drives me crazy about the negativity around DEI is that DEI isn't about giving you an opportunity you don't deserve, in
right,
my opinion. I mean, I could be wrong. Somebody else might say, yeah, no, that's what I want. But I think in general, the idea is that it's not about, oh, we have to, hire more females, even if they're not qualified. The
right,
point is there's 1,000 billion qualified females.
yeah,
So, they just need the opportunity. And to me, it's about the opportunity.
right,
It's showing it. It's not about, giving unqualified opportunities. It's about giving opportunities to everybody.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There was those kind of same challenges in some toxic situations there. Like, I played in college, so like, at a music conservatory, like high level people that are going to do this as their living.
Yeah.
um but I think there's just always a way that you know people can be respectful, and hopefully we're just going towards that more as a society.
You just see too many people succeeding where there's, you're uplifting, you're not in just the perfect way somehow. It's like, we're not berating you, we're not treating you poorly, it's not toxic.
Yeah.
but we're still able to get you to the next level and keep you moving forward.
Yeah, that actually makes me think of something that's in the news recently. So, tennis is kind of the biggest sport for women in the world, right? They make the most
Yeah,
money in tennis.
yeah.
No one makes more money than, Serena Williams
The Williams
and those.
sisters, yeah.
Right. So that in tennis though has been very traditionally toxic coach girl relationships.
Mm,
It some of them has been their own fathers that's been completely abusive, or men that are 50 years older and then they get into a inappropriate romantic relationship
mm,
and all kinds of things. And there's one in the news right now where the WTA that runs the women's tour has actually suspended a coach,
mm. I don't think I've
because
seen that. Yeah,
people reported about him interacting with the player in an inappropriate way, an abusive, kind of mentally
yeah,
abusive way and stuff. And I think that's, hopefully those kind of steps where people are realizing it and trying to put frameworks in place that, this is at the professional level. It's she's a woman, she's a
yeah,
20-year-old woman at this point, but all of this starts as girls. So hopefully
yeah,
things like that is, the other side of it's not tech, but it's in sports where, they need these positive coaching experiences as a girl
yep.
to stick in those, hard to break into kind of areas like sport. But I think tech is kind of similar, where you need those positive role models and mentors um,
I've heard it
along the way
consistently.
when you're a girl to stick with it.
Definitely heard that consistently from the
Yeah,
folks I've talked to. Is that finding that mentor, whether it was early on or whether it was in your first opportunity or at each stop,
yeah,
having somebody positive like that keeps you propelling forward.
right. Yeah, I've definitely benefited from that.
Any last minute thoughts you have on women in tech? Again, feels like things are progressing, which is great. It feels like there's some stagnation in places, and love hearing just more positive stories and other some of the negative side, but how you've dealt with it. It's all impactful. I think getting, and I appreciate you telling it because it's impactful getting it out there so people can hear it.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, and I'm optimistic. And there are organizations like Girls Who Code,
Mm,
who the focus is on mentorship and cool like summer camps and resources for girls to get that tech interest and see what there is out there,
yeah,
in a way that they could participate in instead of some of the traditional ways that make it less of an opportunity for a girl. So
yeah.
I'm optimistic and focusing on those type of things that'll foster more girls getting into STEM.
Yeah, that like you said, pulling back and learning the magic. Like you go to Girls for Code and you realize, like you said, you had to do something where you took two things and had to program something around, and it created this magical thing out of thin air or out of ones and zeros. That getting to see that in a positive environment, kind of this fun side of it, what it can be and what coding can be, and
Yeah.
digging into your problem solving. There's so much to feel there.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully more events like that and podcasts like this. So thank you for having me. I
Yeah,
think this type of thing helps. And yeah, you know, men getting involved too to make those positive environments and be mentors as well. It doesn't have to be. It wasn't necessarily a woman that was my big mentor at any of those steps in those
right.
process. And
It
so
can
that
be, but it
you
doesn't
know
have to be.
right. Yep.
I appreciate it. And again, look forward to hopefully seeing you again sometime soon in person. Kind of
Yeah.
missed out on some of the Ellipse stuff towards the end. The last tech conference I flew in, I was sick, and then I left right before the next one. So it's kind of, bad timing on getting to see you in person again.
Yeah.
But
I'm
really
sure.
enjoyed hanging out and talking with you today.
Yeah. Same. I'm sure our paths will continue to cross.
Well, thanks
Awesome.
again. And
All
yeah,
right.
talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.